Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Friday, November 4th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. It's a big college football weekend for Missouri and Kansas State. The Tigers take on Arkansas, and oh, the coaching connections. Mizzou's Eli Drinkwitz is from Arkansas. Razorbacks defensive coordinator Barry Odom, well, you know about him. Mizzou's head coach the previous 4 years, former Tigers linebacker, great stuff. Beat writer Souichi Terada joins us to talk about the game called the Battle Line Rivalry, and we get in some hoops talk after the Tigers' impressive victory over Oregon this week. After a break, we catch up on Kansas State with Kellis Robinett. The Wildcats play host to Texas on Saturday. It's K-State's regular season finale, and the Wildcats look to improve to 5-5. But win or lose, Kansas State wants to play in a bowl game, and we talk about those prospects. Plus, we peek into the Cats roster for next season. So let's get started talking college sports, starting with Souichi Terada and Mizzou. Souichi, I was so excited to talk to you about this weekend's Mizzou-Arkansas football game. I sent you the invitation 5 minutes early, so I think that's a record for me. I really am stoked about this game. So many storylines. Not the least of which is the coaching situation, but and we'll get to that in a second. But I'm kind of more interested in the game itself. These are two good teams playing against each other, teams that have had success this season that did not have that were woeful in previous years. So much so that they changed coaches. Now Eli Drinkwitz at Mizzou and Sam Pittman at Arkansas have had really nice seasons, comparatively speaking, to the previous year. So what kind of game do you think we're going to see from Missouri-Arkansas on Saturday?
Yeah, I really think it's going to be kind of something like the Mizzou-Kentucky game that we saw. Not necessarily maybe from Arkansas's offense versus Mizzou's defense, but the way that Hogs defense plays, Barry Odom's defense now, the way they play is kind of reminiscent of Kentucky a little bit, and maybe they're disguising some coverages. They're going to try to force turnovers. They lead the SEC in interceptions. So it's really going to come down to how Eli Drinkwitz's offense, and Blair, I think that's kind of picture perfect, right? We talk about all these storylines and whether that be the coaching staff or the players or the game, and you got all of this, but it'll probably come down to kind of the specialities of the two coaches that we really have kind of the magnifying glass on. So I think that's really cool. I think it's going to be kind of there's been kind of some sparks throughout the week, and whether that be Nick Bolton tweeting "See y'all Saturday" after his quote, and kind of all these fun little wrinkles. I think besides just the coaching staff, and that's kind of the way I think Drinkwitz and Mizzou are kind of selling it. During Drinkwitz's however many media appearances, whether it be on the SEC teleconference call or his radio show or his news conference, he's kind of said it's a player's game, and he's kind of deflected pretty much everything or most of the attention away from the coaching staffs. And I really think that's kind of indicative of what they're kind of selling their players, and I think the players are kind of embracing that as well. And so, it should be a lot of fun. It's kind of a hectic time in Mizzou land, but it's fun to say the least.
This game originally was going to be played at Arrowhead Stadium, right? The Friday after Thanksgiving. That's when Arkansas and Missouri have played in previous years. They were going to move it to Kansas City, and it would have been wonderful to have that game here in town. But either way, it's great that it appears to be a competitive game. Missouri has won 4 straight over Arkansas in the series, and I don't think that the rivalry itself has captured the imagination of fans the way it was envisioned that it could. But maybe now we'll see a change in that idea that if there's some some back and forth between the players, like you mentioned, between Bolton and Arkansas. I guess the Arkansas was promoting its linebackers, and Bolton said, "Hey, come on, let's go. Let's see what Saturday's all about." So, well, you can't talk about this game without the coaches, right? I mean, there's just so much connection here with Drinkwitz from Arkansas, Barry Odom, the defensive coordinator for the Razorbacks now. What has Odom done to contribute to the Arkansas success. And listen, when I say success, they're 3-5, right? Missouri's got a winning record. Arkansas does not, but Arkansas certainly is playing better football than it has in recent years. So, to what extent is Barry Odom responsible for that?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right, Blair? Because I remember way back in week 2 of the SEC season, Arkansas upsets Mississippi State, who had just beaten LSU. And so the Bulldogs were ranked. Mizzou was 0-2. They had just been, blown out by Tennessee. And it really seemed like that was pretty much it. And I think, the reason I bring that up was just because everyone pretty much, everyone who knew what they were talking about was praising Barry Odom just because of what he's been able to do with that Arkansas defense. And I think the talent, not maybe the gap, but the talent on the squad was kind of decimated after the past 2 seasons. You go winless in SEC play, that's going to happen. I mean, they got a few transfers and everything, but it really was kind of incredible or maybe kind of shocking to see Mizzou look just completely different, or excuse me, Arkansas look completely different on defense on their Odom. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing just because, going into the season, and doing my research, the Hawks defense was kind of, there wasn't very high expectations or really much expectations at all in the sense that let's just, the kind of prevailing attitude maybe was let's just see how it is and go from there. But I think it's definitely the strength of the squad. And I wrote about this in my article. It really comes down to the turnover margin for Arkansas, and that has to do with its defense. And getting those turnovers. The Hogs are 3-0 when they win a turnover margin, 0-5 otherwise. So that's kind of the one area I think Mizzou fans should be looking at. The Hogs are going to do their absolute best to obviously, pick off Bazelak as much as they can, or force fumbles, which has kind of been an issue for Mizzou, though not recently. So you got all of these things I think Odom's defense is going to want to try to do against, his old team, and that makes for a great matchup.
That story that you mentioned will be linked in the show notes, and of course it's on kansascity.com. So Bazelak, look, he's as a quarterback is every week. He's a key player here, but really something to keep an eye on is Bazelak against the Barry Odom defense that has, as you said, proven to be really opportunistic this year. What's been Bazelak's success rate against good defenses? I know it's kind of a general question, but does he continue to have growing pains at times? Is this something that he can? Is there an opportunity here for him to have a good game?
Yeah, it's crazy, Blair, and Drinkwitz mentions this a lot, but this is really only I mean, this is Bazelak's what, sixth start um,
Yeah,
ever, since he's got, as a collegiate athlete, and he's still learning the quarterback position. I mean, it's kind of getting pounded into the ground that he played in the wishbone, run first offense and everything. But I think there's a lot of truth to that as well, in the sense that Bazelak is still learning. And the thing is too, I really don't think the biggest praise I guess I can give Bazelak is I don't think he's necessarily the reason Mizzou has lost games. And obviously with quarterback, that's kind of a big thing, right? Just because you impact the game more than any other positions. And I think obviously there are going to be growing pains. I think part of that has been due to maybe the offensive line being injured, and I'm talking mostly about the Florida and South Carolina games where Mizzou kind of uncharacteristically look kind of, they kind of put Bazelak in kind of maybe some weird positions, or he was kind of, he was pressured a little bit more than they probably wanted him to. So I think that's kind of a part of it. And I think, Bazelak has done well in the sense that, like I mentioned in the Kentucky game, he just took what the defense gave him, and that gave Mizzou an opportunity to win. And obviously, he's not going to light it up for 400 plus yards like he did against LSU and threw for 4 touchdowns and look, like a Heisman candidate. I don't think that's realistic out of your, redshirt freshman quarterback who is going to be essentially a redshirt freshman next year. So I think all things considered, though, I mean, considering the fact that he still has 4 years of eligibility remaining after this year, just because of the blanket waiver eligibility the NCAA gave, it's the future is looking bright there. And I think, and it seems like, it's kind of a weird thing just because obviously when Bazelak was recruited to Mizzou, he wasn't necessarily sold on Eli Drinkwitz's vision or offensive philosophy or ideas, but it seems like that connection has worked, and Mizzou fans should be excited for that going forward.
absolutely. Okay, it's 11 a.m. kick at Furrow Field on the SEC network, not the alternative, the SEC network. So, hey, we cannot have a conversation about Mizzou without talking about the hoops. And what an impressive performance on Wednesday night in Omaha for Missouri basketball against Dana Altman's Oregon Ducks. Missouri got off to a fantastic start. Oregon chipped away. It's a talented Oregon team that we ranked. They came into the game ranked. It was Oregon's first game, but Oregon chipped away, and when that happened, I just thought, oh no, here we go. Missouri goes 0 for 15 from the field, and Oregon's going to find a way to get it done. And then Missouri went to another level. They found a different gear. Let me find some more cliches I can pull out here, and ended up winning the game rather comfortably. You had to be impressed with Missouri's outing against Oregon.
Oh, absolutely, Blair. It's funny that you mentioned that. Oh no, here we go again. I had my fair share of my Mizzou friends text me, "Hey, here we go again." So I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think bottom line, I don't think Mizzou wins that game last year, and I wrote about it just because Xavier Pinson kind of had the same thinking I did. But remember that road game at Xavier last year, early in the season, I believe,
yes,
in the third game. I mean, that went into overtime. It was kind of a similar-ish game in the sense that Mizzou had to come back, and they forced it into overtime. It was against ranked Xavier, and it was on the road. And I know it's not the same in Omaha and an empty stadium, but the thing that kind of stuck out to me was that when Mizzou really needed a bucket or needed a spark, or when they missed 15 straight shots spanning halves and everything, the guys who stepped up were juniors, in the sense that Xavier Pinson and Javon Pickett, both of those guys, I believe the stat in the story I used was 30 of Mizzou's 41 points came from those two guys. And the reason I say they don't win that game last year, Blair, is the sense that these guys are juniors now. They're upperclassmen. They've been through this two times now, and obviously Pinson had a great finish last year, but consistency was his big thing and big issue, and he's shown at least through 2 games this season. I know it's only 2 games, but he's shown that he's kind of been able to build off of that, and he took this offseason seriously, and I think that's just kind of the biggest thing, because you have so many seniors, you have so many upperclassmen now, including a Pinson and a Pickett, and I really just don't think they had that little extra gear, that you kind of, the cliche that you mentioned last year. And, just, yes, they were kind of oldish, but I've been saying this, Blair, and I keep pounding it. I really do think there's something to it, when your best year is your senior year, or you really have, kind of this different mindset or play style as a junior. So I one, really impressive win, and 2, I think they kind of recess expectations. The next 3 games should be really interesting. You get Wichita State on the road, Liberty, and bragging rights against a current top 5 Illinois team, and I think that sets up very well to just kind of see who this team is and what they can do this year.
Hey, and don't go to sleep on Liberty. I saw them at T-Mobile Center in Kansas City. They were in the tournament last weekend, and they walloped South Carolina in their first game, and played TCU really tough in falling in the title game. So Liberty's not a pushover by any means. Liberty's a good program, but or a good team this year. And it's a good point about the upperclassmen. I think resetting expectations is fair for Mizzou, and now the way I look at it is you better cash in when you're as experienced as Missouri is. If they don't take advantage of all the experience on this team, then I think Conzo Martin has to be reevaluated. But it looks like they're off to a great start in doing just that. So you're right about these next 3 games at Wichita State, Liberty, and then Illinois. Man, that's great. And then is it SEC play right after that, or are there other non-conference games?
A few other non-conference games. I actually believe I believe added one more. And so SEC conference play starts. It's kind of crazy, but it starts this month technically against Tennessee on December 30th. So we're only a few weeks away, from conference play, and then who knows what'll happen. Obviously a weird year, but that Laker football's early signing period, that has stunk up on us.
Yep, for sure. All right, Souichi, great catching up with you, and we will talk to you again next week.
All right, thanks, Blair.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeat KC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. And now we have Kellis Robinett, who covers Kansas State. Kellis, let me ask you, how's the homeschooling going? We haven't talked about that in a while.
Oh, it's been harder than ever the last couple of weeks, actually, with the rise in COVID spikes. We've had, some school days canceled and some daycares canceled. So I've gone from having 2 kids most days to 4 kids a lot of days. It's not the easiest of tasks, but next week we're hoping we're going to be back down to just the 2. So fingers crossed.
A home full of Robinetts throughout the day. That's good luck with that. And
I wish I could say I was teaching them all to be like future Einsteins or something, but it's sadly more just let's get through each day without eating food and surviving.
Right. That's right. Survive in advance. Exactly. All right. I noticed through the interoffice mail that you have just delivered a Kansas State question and answer for publication. So it'll be up here probably about the same time the podcast is posted, if not before. Give me a sample of the Q&A. What was the most intriguing question that you got?
Everybody wants to know which Kansas State football seniors might be coming back next year, in particular Skylar Thompson. I don't know the answers to any of those just yet, but I do think that the way Chris Kleiman and some of the players have talked lately, I think at least a few of these seniors who otherwise would be going off to do other things in their lives will be back next season. And it is a very interesting question that Skylar will have to face here at the end, because it's not like Will Howard has torn it up and Jake Rubley, who a lot of people think might be the quarterback for the future. He hasn't really played a whole lot of high school football this year because of the COVID situation in his state. So, Kansas State would probably welcome him back at this point. He's probably their best option at quarterback next season, and he's probably seen that and maybe thinking more seriously than ever about coming back. That'll be an interesting decision whenever he comes around to making it.
And it's a decision that has never been it's never happened in college sports, and not likely to ever happen again. It's just a one-time free eligibility season for football players who want it. So it's so unusual, and programs are going to have to negotiate their roster sizes and depth charts and just figure out how to go forward. And it might flood the transfer portal as well, don't you think?
Yeah, it might. I mean, the transfer portal is already flooded, which I think is one reason why both Chris Kleiman and defensive coordinator Joe Klanderman came out this week and more or less said they would be willing to welcome back with open arms any senior that wants to come back, just because there is so much uncertainty out there right now. And even if they could go out and bring in a stud, a 3 or 4 star player to help as a freshman next year, that player can't replicate the knowledge and experience that a senior who's been around this program and has been in this program before COVID times, when they could practice and everything, is a little bit more valuable right now, because they can teach what the program's all about to incoming players. You know a little bit more about them. And I wonder if it's going to be like that at a lot of places. What do you devalue, or what do you value more, young talent or old talent? It's a decision nobody's ever faced before, and I think we'll see. I think we'll see a lot of transfers. I think we'll see a lot of grad transfers, and people compare this kind of stuff to the Wild West all the time, but this might actually be a time when that comparison actually fits, just because I think there will be a lot of unprecedented movement here in the next couple of months.
Something I just thought of as you were talking was there. It's absolutely not the same thing. But there was something of a precedent after World War II. A lot of the soldiers came back and because of the GI Bill, enrolled in colleges, and a lot of college football players came back. And as 22, 23, 24 year olds were coming back to college, and all of a sudden football rosters were up 150 to 200 players, and it took years for that to sort out and to level out again. I don't think this is something that'll take years, but it's going to take some time. When you have an incoming class of recruits on top of whatever percentage of players who would normally be leaving a program come back, you've got some log jams now, and as you said, decisions to be made by programs, by coaches, by the athletes and their families as well. Hey, I wanted to talk about another story that you wrote this week, and I thought it was really interesting about what Chris Kleiman said about postseason football, and even with the prospect of Kansas State finishing under 500, he sees great value in having practice in December and getting ready for a bowl game. How about expanding on that idea for us?
Yeah, it's pretty much the old Bill Snyder model, right? Nobody loved bowl practices more than that guy. To his credit, he built a lot of the success that he had in Manhattan on those, where at the beginning of every bowl practice session, instead of giving all the starters the reps, you go out and let the young players get a chance to show what they could do, and it helped them develop, and it helped coaches evaluate where they needed to attack their recruiting trail moving forward. And Chris Kleiman pretty much feels the exact same way, and this year more than others, especially. I think he feels cheated. I think a lot of the team feels cheated that they didn't get as many practices in as usual. They didn't get spring practice, and then they've had close to 80 players have COVID this season. So those guys have all had to sit out. Basically, he even said that regardless of whether they get to a bowl or not, they're practicing next week, just in case, because he wants them to practice. So they're going to take advantage of that any way they can, and I get that totally from a coaching perspective. If somebody's going to give a coach the option, hey, do you want to practice or do you not want to practice? The obvious answer is to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. But it is an interesting situation from the fans' perspective too. I can certainly see why somebody sitting at home who's not going to be able to build a vacation around a bowl game doesn't really want to see a Kansas State team with a 500 or a losing record playing, a similar team from the American Conference or the Pac-12 or something. I can definitely see why there might not be a whole lot of excitement for that game, but just strictly from the players and the coaches involved, I think it definitely is the right move. There's no reason for them to turn down the ball.
Right. There are, as of we are recording this on Friday before noon, and as of now, there are 10 fewer bowl games than were scheduled entering the season. So fewer opportunities for programs. And one of those that I think has changed, the Armed Forces Bowl is still on the schedule, but they've changed the conference affiliation. It's not that was a Big 12 bowl, but I think I saw where it's now an SEC Pac-12 matchup this year. Now, look, I think you talk about Wild Wild West. I think the bowl lineup's going to end up being a lot of that. It's whoever bowl officials want in their games, and working with the conferences and the schools to get the matchups that they want for TV, especially with with no fans. I saw where the Fiesta Bowl just announced that they're not going to have fans at their games this year, so it's not going to be a how many tickets can you sell determination. I don't think that would be part of it, but who knows? I mean, who knows what bowls? Have you talked to any of the bowl folks? You don't see any at games, do you? Bowl scouts?
No, they haven't made the trips out this season. That's one thing I have not done yet, unfortunately. Maybe next week, depending on what happens here against Texas, I'll make some of those calls. But yeah, it's a great unknown. We're not even totally sure if the bowl games are going to happen. Like you said, the Fiesta and I believe the Rose Bowl also said they're not going to have fans this season, so that'll be very different. I think from what Kansas State people have told me is that the expectation is that at least the bowls that have tie-ins with the Big 12, they want to play, they want to move forward. Maybe the trip out there won't be a week, maybe it'll only be a day or two. Maybe the payout won't be as much because there won't be fans, but basically the teams want to play, the bowl games want to host teams. So as long as that's there, I think we will have games, but it'll just be so different because, like you said, there won't be fans. Their bowls won't be looking to invite programs based on uh, programs that travel a lot. And I'll tell you, a team you brought this up earlier. A team I feel sorry for right now is like Iowa State. They're looking at a chance to go to maybe like the Fiesta Bowl, one of the best bowls they've ever been to, and their fans won't even be able to go. I mean, think about that. The first time a program breaks through and has this great opportunity to go to a place like that, and they're left out. It's it's just another thing COVID has taken away from us, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to write about that this weekend. If Iowa State clinches a spot in the Big 12 championship game, which they can do by beating West Virginia on Saturday afternoon, they will they'll play in their first Big 12 title game, and fans. I don't know how many tickets are going to be available for that game, but I was talking to Iowa State officials earlier this week, and they're like they travel like Kansas State fans. They would sell out their allotment and then ask for anything additional, and then their fans would find ways to get in that stadium. They're just amazing, and you're right. In this of all years to have fan restrictions or to have just no fans at all, it has to be this year for Iowa State. So. Okay, it's K-State, Texas.
We kind of be like Kansas State going to that first Copper Bowl in '93.
Oh my God, that was incredible. Yeah, that Copper Bowl, people still talk about that from Kansas State. How just how meaningful that was. 20 to 25,000 fans ended up going to that game, and I remember the following couple of years, the Cotton Bowl game, and then they played a holiday, something like that. The next couple of them, they just took. All of Riley County and every Kansas State fan in the country showed up at those games. Those were revivals for that program. And look, I think it's true of this part of the country. And Kansas State fans, Iowa State fans, Nebraska fans, they just travel. They do. It's their vacation money. It's their leisure money. It's what they do, and what a tough time not to be able to do it. And you mentioned the Rose Bowl. California now has some of the strongest restrictions of gathering of any place in the country right now. So I can't imagine any bowl game in California being open to fans. And what the 49ers are already pulling out of their state and playing their home games at Arizona now. It's just different. So again, Texas K-State 11 a.m. on Saturday at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. It's on Fox. And hey, Kellis, before we wrap it up, let's just talk a little bit about hoops. The Wildcats picked up their first victory of the season this week, beating the KC Roos by 4. And nice to get a W on the board for Kansas State, but probably maybe not the decisive victory, as it turns out, a 4-point win that maybe Bruce Weber was hoping for. What can we conclude from K-State hoops right now?
I think that was a step in the right direction for them, even though they only won by 4. That they did score the first 17 points of the game. So I just kind of wonder if at that point they kind of just turned the intensity switch off and said, "We got this." And that was, to me anyway, that was the reason they only won by 4. It wasn't like they just came out and played poorly. I think UNLV next will be a good matchup for them. I think Colorado was above their weight class. I think UMKC is below their weight class. UNLV is kind of right there with them. So it'll be a nice barometer to see where they're coming along. I've seen improvement every game, and I really like what I've seen from Nigel Pack at point guard. He's probably the best shooter they've had under Bruce Weber, which is a very refreshing thing because they have not shot well from the outside lately. It just for them is how much can they improve, how much better can they get as the season goes on. And games right now are important for them because we've seen what some Big 12 teams have done already. Kansas has beaten Baylor, looks really good. West Virginia took Gonzaga to the wire. I don't think there are going to be many free wins in Big 12 play. So if Kansas State wants to get some wins, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Texas beating North Carolina at
Right,
Asheville,
right.
and Oklahoma State went up and beat Marquette. And there have been some pretty impressive Baylor over Illinois, have some impressive results so far for the Big 12. So, yeah, K-State, UNLV on Saturday, 7 o'clock, and then they play Milwaukee next week. The Butler game got postponed, but so after Milwaukee, it's kind of clear sailing until Big 12 play starts at Iowa State the following week. Okay, Kellis, Robinett, great catching up with you, and we will talk to you again next week.
All right, thanks, Blair.
That'll do it for today and this week on SportsBeat KC. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Randy Mason, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. A tip of the cap to Souichi, Terada, and Kellis Robinett for stopping by and talking Mizzou and Kansas State. Their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we got another deal for you, especially for those that want a deep dive into the Stars' terrific Chiefs coverage. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. That's kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. Do you want more than just sports coverage? I know I do. Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email, bkerkhoff@kcstar.com, and we'll get you to the right place. So whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Monday breaking down the Chiefs-Broncos game on Sunday Night Football.